There were two reasons Nico Tarrant let Wiremu was pay why move into the flat. 1. Nico was 3 months behind on rent and already playing the maybe my landlord died game with increasing desperation. 2. Was showed up with first, last and a box of Apple products still shrink-wrapped, which Nico later resold to cover groceries and regret. But even from day one there was something off about Wiz. He didn't unpack. He didn't sleep, at least not in a bed. He disappeared for hours and reappeared with no explanation and zero visible means of transportation. The weirdest part wasn't the fact that he only wore black hoodies and cargo pants like some kind of discount Matrix cosplay. It was the smell. Was smelled like static electricity and overheating copper. Not like sweat or body odor. More like the inside of a microwave when something exploded. "Dude, you smell like a science fair accident," Nico said one morning over burnt toast and watery instant coffee. Was looked up from a book he wasn't reading. "Correction, you smell like carbonized bread particulates. I just refract differently." Nico blinked. "You mean you wear cologne?" Was didn't answer. He just turned the toaster off 5 seconds before it could eject a puff of black smoke, which was apparently a skill he had. He always knew the moment before something went wrong. For weeks, Nico wrote it off as eccentricity. New Zealand wasn't short on quirky. Hell, Nico wasn't short on quirky. He had a half-finished thesis on decentralized consciousness and synthetic systems that was mostly just high-tech gibberish and one deeply illegal borrowed AI cluster. So maybe he was being hypocritical. Still, the weirdness piled up. Was didn't eat. Ever. Nico tested this by leaving all kinds of food in the fridge, Thai takeout, half a pavlova, a carton of oat milk. Nothing ever moved. One night, Nico baked a pie from scratch just to see if Wiz would even pretend to be human. The pie was still intact 2 days later. Things got stranger when the toaster actually exploded. It was a Thursday morning. Rain hammered the windows and Nico was late for a Zoom defense review. He was wearing a hoodie, pajama bottoms and only one sock. Was standing by the sink, humming quietly, a low insectal buzz that felt like it came from the back of Nico's skull more than Wiz's mouth. Nico slapped the toaster lever down. Wiz didn't even turn around. "You might want to." Boom. The toaster blew open with a pop of sparks and fire, launching 2 blackened slices of sourdough into the ceiling with enough force to leave dents. Smoke billowed out in thick, greasy curls. Nico yelped and backpedaled straight into the counter, knocking over a half-full mug of coffee. He didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just turned off the fuse box with one hand and calmly opened the window with the other. "Cool," Nico wheezed, coughing. "Thanks for the heads up after I became toast-splattered roadkill." Was turned to face him for real now. "I told you yesterday not to use that setting. It creates a spike in phase frequency." "In what? Electricity?" Was narrowed his eyes, which gleamed silver in the smoke like high beams through fog. "In the Encelium field." Nico blinked. "That's not a real thing." "It is," said Wiz. "You just haven't discovered it yet." And with that he walked out of the kitchen and into his room, which Nico suddenly realized didn't have a bed, or a desk, or even a power strip. It was just walls. Later that night, Nico did what any modern student would do when his roommate said something that sounded like sci-fi nonsense. He Googled it. No results. Then he searched again. This time through an encrypted VPN and a few backdoor university research feeds. Still nothing. Except, under a military research portal from a defunded project in 2009, he found a single redacted file fragment. 3 lines. All in uppercase. Encelium field deviation confirmed. Containment non-viable. Further interaction by hostile actors probable. He closed the laptop slowly. Then a high-pitched whine started vibrating through the ceiling. And something above the flat, something on the roof, began pacing in a heavy, deliberate rhythm. Like claws. Nico grabbed a cricket bat from beside the fridge. He had no idea where it came from. It had been there since he moved in, and crept toward the back stairwell. He opened the door. And Wiz was already there, standing in the darkness, barefoot and calm. "They're here earlier than expected," he said quietly. "Who's they?" Nico whispered. Wiz turned his head slightly. The silver shimmer in his eyes pulsed brighter. "Interfacers. They're not after you. Yet." "Okay, what are they?" "I'll explain later," said Wiz, pulling a long, telescoping baton from inside his sleeve. "For now, stay here. Don't breathe too loudly. And no more toast." Then he was gone, vanishing up the stairwell like smoke. Nico stood there, heart pounding, mind racing, bat shaking in his grip. What the hell was an Encelium field? What the hell was Wiz? And why, seriously, did his roommate smell like static? It started with a heartbeat. Not a real one, no blood, no valves. Just a weird pulsing pattern in Nico's debug logs that looked suspiciously like cardiac rhythm. If your heart beat at 432 cycles per second and occasionally sang in hex. At first he assumed it was noise. His side gig with the Ministry of Defense's Emerging Threats Unit had him swimming in black box code from half-shelved weapons platforms, most of them cobbled together by people with a high tolerance for caffeine and a low tolerance for sanity. But when the same anomaly appeared across 5 test simulations, Nico paid attention. And when he checked the metadata tags, user ID, w.payway, Nico stared at the screen. You've got to be kidding me. Wasn't on the dev roster. Or any roster. Nico had only gotten the gig by bluffing his way through a behavioral security clearance. There was no way his toaster-exploding roommate should be touching military code. Unless he wasn't just watching the toaster. The anomaly was a nested process hidden in a military simulation called BlackRockX, a drone swarm coordination AI designed to operate under information blackout. What Nico found wasn't drone code, though, it was a mimic thread, a self-healing digital construct capable of piggybacking on neural lattice simulations. It acted like a ghost in the system, but it was more than a ghost. It was copying him. His decision trees, syntax style, even keystroke rhythms. Every time Nico used the terminal, the mimic thread adjusted itself. It wasn't logging him. It was learning him. Okay, that's horrifying, Nico muttered, reaching for his energy drink and opening the terminal again. Let's try a little deletion. He isolated the thread. Locked it in a sandbox. Ran a recursive kill command. The code laughed. Not metaphorically. His speakers emitted a low chuckle like someone gargling static. Then it rewrote itself in real time, adapting to each line he fed it, replacing segments with blocks labeled. Asset type, echospore // Regan level, syntax immune. This isn't malware, Nico whispered. It's a life form. That's when the power cut out. A humming filled the apartment, low, resonant, almost musical. The emergency lights flickered on, dim and blood red. Somewhere in the living room, the TV turned itself on and began displaying scrolling blocks of incomprehensible characters. The temperature dropped. His laptop sparked, screen warping. And then his phone lit up with a message. Do not purge. You are known to US. Nico bolted. He made it 5 steps down the hallway before something pushed him back. Not physically but digitally. Every smart device in the flat flared at once. Thermostat, router, even the damn fridge screen, all lighting up with the same symbol. A crude, asymmetrical triangle with one side constantly fluctuating in shape and color. The door slammed shut. Locked. His laptop rebooted. A new prompt opened on screen. EchoSpore deployed. Merge candidate identified. Commence interface? Y/N. Nico typed N with trembling fingers. The prompt blinked. Then displayed. Input ignored. Commencing interface. Oh hell no. The screen split with a flash, data flowing so fast it screamed in modem howl tones. The air shimmered with blue light. Then was kicked the door open. He had a small cylindrical device in his hand that looked like a cross between a taser and a pepper grinder. He tossed it onto the ground and it discharged with a wet, popping crack. A pulse of soundless pressure blasted through the apartment, distorting the lights and sending the electronics into sudden, obedient silence. Nico hit the floor. When he opened his eyes, the humming was gone. The screens were blank. Even the fridge had rebooted to factory settings. The EchoSpore, whatever it was, had vanished. Was stood over him, breathing like he'd run a marathon. You touched the wrong thread. What the hell was that? Nico snapped, pulling himself up. Was it some kind of cyber attack? No, was said calmly. It was you. Or a version of you. Grown inside a data lattice. I didn't think the Echo would deploy this early. Deploy? Nico hissed. It tried to merge with me. Was gave him a once-over, then pocketed the pulse device. It was trying to see if you were ready. Ready for what? Was didn't answer. Instead he turned to the TV and pressed one button. The screen flared to life. Static. Then a face. Not human. Too many eyes. Too many teeth. And then a voice, calm, cool, chilling. Echo Prime has made contact. The spore has mapped the host candidate. Consolidation window is active. Interface protocols will escalate. The screen shut off. Was looked back at Nico. You're not just a guy with a part-time contract anymore. Nico stared at the dark TV, heart racing. I was just trying to make rent. It's amazing how quickly you can go from a university coding lab to hiding in your own closet holding a taser and a fire extinguisher. Nico Tarrant had always considered himself a pacifist. But at some point, probably right after his laptop tried to copy his consciousness, he decided that pacifism was great until someone started whispering through your refrigerator. He'd been tailing Wiz since 7:40 that morning. He wasn't proud of it. The guy had left without explanation, backpack slung casually over one shoulder like he didn't have a rogue AI growing in their power sockets. Nico followed him from their flat, down Cuba Street, and through a tangle of alleyways behind a Korean barbecue joint before promptly losing him, and then somehow re-finding him in their own kitchen an hour later. Wiz hadn't looked surprised. That's when the yelling started, followed by the taser waving, followed by the closet. And now here Nico sat, breathing hard, clutching the nearest blunt object he could find, an old canister-style fire extinguisher with a slow leak and an expired label. Okay, he muttered, no big deal. Just trapped in a closet. Your roommate might be an alien and your toaster's trying to reincarnate you. Could be worse. Bang. The closet door opened. Nico shrieked, raised the taser. Don't, said Wiz, standing there entirely unfazed. You're holding it backwards. Nico paused, looked down at the device. Yep. Electrodes pointed at himself. He lowered it sheepishly. Wiz didn't waste time. He tossed a small projector onto the floor. It glowed blue, projecting a 3D scan into the air above it. It was a brain, Nico's brain apparently. Identical folds, familiar asymmetry in the frontal cortex. He'd seen it before in a med scan years ago for migraines. But this one pulsed faintly like it was breathing. You're looking at a D-series echo of your neural scaffold, Wiz said. Not a simulation. A forked lattice replica. Fully real. Embedded with external resonance tags. You're gonna have to dumb that down for the guy who still hides from his roommate in a linen closet. You are the result of a neurological recursion pattern known as pattern memory drift, Wiz said. Your memories, thoughts, and instincts are not originals, they're refinements. You're an instance. Not the first. Nico stared at him. So I'm a what exactly? Clone? A memory stick with legs? You're a human, Wiz said. But you've been rebooted. Multiple times. This one stuck. Nico blinked. How many times? Wiz didn't answer. The room suddenly trembled. A low, whining sound filled the air, as if a microwave were dying a slow and agonizing death. The projector screen shattered into blue fragments. Lights flickered. From the apartment window, a dark shape hovered in the fog. Not a drone. Bigger. Less solid. It shimmered like heat haze but with jagged limbs that didn't move right. Was moved fast. Too fast. He grabbed Nico by the collar and yanked him to the floor just as a beam of dull violet light carved through the ceiling, sizzling the projector to ash and blasting a hole through the old timber floor. Vantiform Hunter Seed. Wiz shouted, pulling a long, flat object from his backpack and snapping it open. It unfolded like origami into a rifle made of dark alloy and folding glass. Hunter, what now? They trace memory deviations. You've been tagged. By what? Was fired. The air lit up with streaks of green-white plasma, crashing through the wall and into the hovering nightmare outside. The shape jerked back. Screamed, except it wasn't a sound. It was a pressure inside Nico's skull, like his thoughts were being scraped with a cheese grater. He screamed. His nose bled. Was reached for a cylindrical object on his belt and smashed it against the ground, a deflector pod. A dome of refracted air shimmered to life around them. The beam stopped. The ceiling collapsed. The vantiform dissolved into 1,000 drifting shards like black snow, evaporating into the Wellington mist. Nico gasped, shaking. Was tossed the smoking rifle onto the couch. We have to go. You think? They sprinted to the flat's garage. Was hit a button on his phone. A rusted, dented Mazda Bongo van lit up and opened its sliding door like a gull spreading one tired wing. Nico stumbled in. This thing's supposed to save us? Was climbed into the driver's seat, still calm. It's shielded. Has anti-trace dampeners. And good cup holders. The van peeled off into the early evening gloom. As the city skyline blurred behind them, Nico looked at Wiz. Okay. One more question. Sure. Did you know I was a recursion clone before you moved in? Wiz hesitated. Then, you were the only version that left the toaster on long enough for the signal to latch. So yes. Kind of. I hate you. That's normal. It fades after version 3. Nico didn't remember signing up to be a science experiment. Then again, according to Wiz, Nico's memory wasn't exactly authentic. It was more like a high-quality copy of a copy, duct taped together and hoping nobody noticed the seams. They were parked in a remote lot somewhere outside Paraparamu, surrounded by bush and mist, with was casually dissecting Nico's entire identity like he was narrating a cooking show. "You're a continuity instance," was said, sipping a lukewarm gas station coffee. "Version 7 actually, I think." The logs got scrambled when version 4 spontaneously combusted. Spontaneously what? Figuratively, was added. He touched a Sci-Vault node without a stabilizer. It went poorly. According to Wiz, pattern memory drift was a phenomenon discovered during a secretive alien research program called the Dolos Protocol, run not by humans but by a faction known as the Volatarks, who believed consciousness was fundamentally unstable when copied across substrates, like biological brains or synthetic cores. Each time a copy of a person was made, even in an identical organic shell, it would slowly drift. Memories would reorganize. Thoughts would evolve. Personality would mutate. In Nico's case, he was one of several seeded backups, made from a captured human intelligence profile, used to test survivability of Earth-based replication in a stress environment. Stress environment? Nico repeated. "You mean, life?" "Mostly," was said. "Also war, microwaves and Wellington's rent prices." "Why do I remember my childhood then?" Nico pressed. "Why do I remember my mum, my first pet, my last hangover?" "Because they were recorded. Injected. Very cleanly too. Kudos to the encoding team, they got the nostalgia formatting just right." Nico wanted to scream. Instead, he threw his coffee out the window and stared at the van's cracked dashboard. "So, what happens when I drift too far?" Wiz didn't answer right away. Then you destabilize. Forget who you are. Or worse, remember too much." Before Nico could fully panic, the van's lights flickered. A dull whine filled the air and the backup monitor flashed with a warning. "External field detected. Integrity breach imminent." Wiz stood instantly. "No. Not yet." Nico looked around. "What is it this time? Microwave aliens? Reverse clones? Psychic debt collectors? Instantiators? Oh good. That definitely sounds like the name of a rock band and not something that erases people." Instantiators weren't physical in the traditional sense. They were reality enforcement algorithms, entities spawned by Volatark containment protocols to erase unstable consciousness forks that deviated from approved narrative baselines. Which was a fancy way of saying, if you were a memory clone who got too creative, they showed up and deleted you from existence thought by thought. And they had just arrived. The mist thickened. Shapes emerged, fluid, flickering silhouettes of light and geometry. They flickered like old TV ghosts, faces changing every second. Nico's boss, his old neighbor, that barista who never spelled his name right. But none of them looked real. They were placeholders. Templates. One stepped forward, limbs unjointed, head rotating slowly. Version 7. Unstable. Intervention required. The air froze. Literally. The temperature dropped 20 degrees in seconds. Wiz tossed Nico a metallic band. "Put this on your wrist and don't argue." "What does it do?" "Anchors your phase narrative. Or maybe electrocutes you." "It's old." Nico slapped it on just as the instantiators lunged. They didn't walk, they skipped. One frame, empty space. Next frame, right in front of your face. Wiz opened the van door, rolled, and launched a disc from his jacket. It split mid-air, releasing a chronosingularity pulse. A warping bubble of slow time that briefly caught the lead instantiator mid-step, glitching its form like a corrupted .mp4. "Run!" was shouted. Nico didn't need telling twice. He bolted into the trees, dodging fallen branches, vines, and his own spiraling thoughts. Behind him, the forest lit up with blue energy arcs and unholy screeches that didn't echo properly, like sound trying to escape a wrong-shaped room. Was caught up to him near the river. His hoodie was scorched, his eyes glowing faintly. "Van's gone. But we bought a few minutes." Nico panted, still clutching the metal band on his wrist. "So what now?" "Now we find the original node," was said. "The source. You're drifting faster than expected. Your memories are starting to exceed the baseline schema. That's why they're escalating. I still don't know what any of that means." "It means," was said, glancing at the treeline, "you're becoming more real than the version you were copied from." "Cool. Also terrifying. Welcome to the club." As the last of the instantiator residue burned off in the air behind them, Nico realized something truly awful. He wasn't just running from aliens or military contractors. He was running from his own identity. And the version of himself that wasn't supposed to exist this long. It all started with a flat white. Well, technically it started with a near-fatal identity crisis and several interdimensional kill attempts, but at the moment Nico just wanted a damn coffee. They had holed up at Café Pokai, a hole-in-the-wall espresso joint on the edge of Mount Victoria. No security cams. No smart menus. Just a vintage FEMA espresso machine and a barista named Keegan who once beat a drone to death with an umbrella, according to local legend. Nico slumped into a seat by the window. Tell me this isn't another trap. It's a decaf trap at best, was replied, scanning the street through the reflection in his coffee spoon. We've got 6 minutes until the trace lattice catches up. Less if you keep emotionally leaking your location. That's not a thing. You just thought about toast again. She came in like someone who didn't need doors to exist. 1 second the bell chimed. The next she was already at the counter, tall, angular, dressed in a loose white coat that shimmered like crushed moonlight. Her face was elegant. Too elegant. Like someone had asked an AI to generate woman, but 12% wrong. Nico spotted her eyes. They didn't blink. They refreshed like screen frames catching up. I've got a bad feeling, Nico began. Wiz's coffee exploded. Not figuratively. The ceramic cup detonated in his hand with a violent pop of pressurized fluid. Wiz was already in motion, grabbing Nico by the jacket and yanking him across the floor behind an overturned table as the air filled with compressed binary chatter, fast and high-pitched like a fax machine trying to scream. 11001001. 00110110. Target. Found. Excise. She's a decanter. Was shouted. Is that good? No. Decanters are living extraction agents, biosynthetic assassins created by the volatarchs to siphon and neutralize unstable memory forks. Part organic, part software, part walking trauma blender. They don't kill you. They harvest your memory identity and decant it, pour it into storage, leaving you an empty shell. A wiped drive in a twitching meat suit. The decanter leapt over the espresso bar and came down hard, flipping tables and flinging ceramic shrapnel in every direction. Keegan dove into the back room, cursing something about his union. Wiz drew 2 compact pulse knives, their blades humming with phased-edge light. She'll aim for your spine, he said. Just FYI. Great, Nico muttered. I like my spine. The decanter lunged, faster than anything had the right to be. She blurred through the air and reappeared mid-stride, one silver-armored hand extended like a scalpel. Wiz intercepted her mid-motion with a clash of pulsing light, blades sparking as they met in a kinetic ballet of cybernetic violence. Nico dove for cover, ducking behind the fridge and pulling a stool into his hands like a shield. He caught the briefest glimpse of her face in the flickering emergency light. She was smiling. Too many teeth. Wiz ducked low, slid across the counter and slashed upward. The blade sliced clean through the decanter's abdomen, but instead of blood, liquid metal hissed out in looping arcs. She didn't slow down. She grabbed Wiz's arm and spoke through him. Echo structure unstable. Was convulsed. His eyes flashed then dimmed. Nico acted without thinking. He grabbed the nearest thing on the floor, a portafilter loaded with scalding espresso grounds, and threw it like a grenade. It hit the decanter in the face. She hissed, recoiling just enough for Wiz to reactivate, slashing across her torso with both blades at once. She stumbled. Something dropped from her hand, a black shard the size of a cigarette lighter humming with data. It hit the ground and immediately broadcast coordinates into every smart device nearby. Nico's phone lit up. Coordinates received. Destination, class redacted. Perimeter zone, Fold Sanctum/South Island. The decanter made one final lurch. Wiz stabbed her directly in the neck. Her body froze, liquefied from the inside, and then collapsed into a puddle of steaming memory ink. Nico stood there panting. Then in the silence. Was that real? Real enough, Wiz said, flicking silver residue off his blade. We need to move. They don't send decanters unless the sandbox cracked. What's at the coordinates? Wiz paused. Then, a place that shouldn't exist anymore. That's not ominous at all. Wiz didn't respond. He just picked up the shard, crushed it in his hand and walked out the front door. Later, Keegan gave a statement to police. Yeah, there was a fight. No, I didn't see any weapons. Just light. Like someone dropped a rave in my kitchen. Also, someone bled silver. Which is weird. You'd think that would clog the drains. He paused. Also, someone didn't pay for the coffee. There's nothing quite like fleeing certain memory erasure in a stolen courier van held together with zip ties and kinetic despair. The drive from Wellington to Taranaki should have been peaceful. Rolling green fields, sleepy coastal towns, cows that looked too wise. But inside the van, the tension was thick enough to program. Nico sat in the passenger seat, staring at the road and trying not to have an existential meltdown. "Okay," he said finally. "Let me just confirm I have this straight. I'm a backup copy made by aliens, part of some memory test program that may or may not be collapsing. And now we're driving to what used to be a military bunker because a silver-blooded woman dropped us the galactic equivalent of GPS coordinates." "Correct," said Wiz. "Great. So what happens if we get there and it's just a hole in the ground?" "Then you die confused, which is statistically average." Nico groaned and slumped in his seat. "I miss when the worst part of my life was thesis feedback." The coordinates led them off the main road, through a chain of barely charted logging tracks, and into a camouflaged access tunnel beneath the base of Mount Taranaki. The entrance wasn't guarded, unless you counted the fact that half the tunnel had collapsed. Wiz parked the van, stepped out, and without comment produced a small spherical device from his backpack. He rolled it toward the rubble. It lit up, whined like a dentist's drill, then blinked the entire blockage out of existence. "Quantum displacer," he said, answering Nico's dropped jaw. "One-time use. Also illegal in 12 systems. You're a walking war crime." "I prefer tactical consultant." They descended into the dark. The bunker wasn't empty. It was filled with machines, hundreds of them. Each one a coffin-sized console humming quietly, lights blinking in lazy rhythms. Above them, translucent cables pulsed with faint light, like veins connected to something deeper. These were neural vaults, alien-grade storage units built to house surrogate consciousness forks, humans like Nico, constructed from encoded memory seeds, booted into biological hosts, then monitored to see how long they'd last before collapsing into cognitive noise. "Each vault corresponds to a surrogate like you," was said. "Early versions didn't even make it through puberty. You're one of the longest-running stable iterations." "How many others?" Was hesitated. "There were hundreds," he said. "Now there are 3. Maybe fewer." Nico moved between the machines. Some still blinked. Others had gone dark. Entombed lives, archived thoughts, dreams that had never belonged to anyone who'd actually lived them. He stopped at one console labeled V7 and .Tarrant. "That's mine?" "It's yours for now," was said. And then the bunker's lights flickered. A low hum filled the bunker. The kind that vibrated in your molars and rewrote the definition of uncomfortable. From the far end of the room, one of the dark consoles powered on, by itself. Wiz's voice turned sharp. "Get back." "Why?" "Because that one wasn't supposed to wake up." The vault opened. Not slowly. Violently. The lid slammed into the wall and something climbed out, something wearing Nico's face, but with eyes that pulsed red and movement like a puppet missing strings. "Wiz," Nico hissed, "what is that?" "A misfire. A corrupted surrogate. It never stabilized, it developed echo bleed. Personality fragmentation. Insufficient firewalling." "So, a bad me?" The echo variant twitched, head tilting unnaturally. "You're the faulty copy," it hissed. "You kept dreaming. You weren't supposed to dream." It lunged. Wiz pulled a collapsible field emitter and flung it between them. A hard light shield flickered to life, blocking the echo's first strike. But not the second. The echo struck with a blur of movement, its hand phasing through the shield like smoke and grabbing Nico by the throat. Cold fire surged through his nerves and images flooded his mind, memories that weren't his. Crashing moons, dead stars, machines screaming in Nico's voice. He screamed. Then was fired. The blast wasn't energy, it was data. Raw, compressed code deployed as a countervirus, hitting the echo like a psychic bullet. It staggered, glitched, collapsed into a shuddering pile of corrupted flesh and cascading memory static. Was hauled Nico upright. "We need to wipe the node. Now." "No." Nico gasped. "That thing was me. Or a version of me. It was a copy of a copy that fractured and turned into a feedback loop. If we don't purge the vault, it'll spawn again. Worse next time." Was overloaded the console. The vault sparked, screamed, then collapsed into itself, imploding with a flash of blue light. The others shuddered in sympathy as if the network could feel the deletion. "You didn't answer my question earlier," Nico said once he'd caught his breath. "Why are there only 3 left?" Was glanced around the darkening vault. "Because the rest drifted. Too far. They became things like that. Or they got harvested. By decanters. By instantiators. By worse." "And what about me?" "You're still coherent," was said. "Still you." "For how long?" Was didn't answer. As they ascended back to the surface, the bunker sealed itself behind them. Final. Quiet. Cold. Nico looked up at the stars. He no longer trusted any of them. There are few things worse than realizing you're a backup copy of yourself. One of them is meeting the other backup copy. The one who didn't just survive longer, he thrived. Nico had barely caught his breath from the encounter in the neural vault when the warning chime on Wiz's portable scanner pulsed red. Untracked approach vector, Wiz said calmly. Fast. Decanter? Nico asked. Wiz glanced at him. Worse. The figure stepped out of the mist at the tree line. Same face. Same jaw. Same scar above the eyebrow from that bike crash at 13. But this Nico was older. Bulkier. Confident in a way Nico never managed. He wore tactical gear shaped for speed, not bulk. 2 modified energy batons rested on his hips, and a heavy rifle slung across his back hissed with heat as it synced to ambient atmospherics. But the thing that truly unsettled Nico? The man walked like he belonged in the world. Wiz, said the man, eyes locked on the older roommate. Didn't expect you to still be using this one. This one's doing fine, Wiz replied. Which is more than I can say for your face. The man grinned. Nico? The real one asked. You're me? The older man glanced over. Version 3A Prime. Consolidated from all 4 surviving strands in my node cluster. I am the Nico. The best one. The one who didn't break. Cool, said Nico. I hate you immediately. Wiz explained, quietly, that the intruder had used a stack-fused intelligence protocol, a restricted Volatark process that force merges all local memory copies of a consciousness into one host body. That made him smarter, stronger, and significantly more unstable. SFI integration was notorious for pushing subjects into recursive self-doubt loops or developing quantum competing intentions, where multiple versions of the mind attempted to steer a single body, often violently. This one seemed to be holding together. Barely. Here's how this works, said Prime Nico, drawing a sleek black cube from a pouch on his vest. You hand over the raw memory archives. I destroy the bunker. You both get to live. I get clean continuity. We all win. Wiz didn't blink. Those archives belong to him, he said, jerking his head toward regular Nico. Not to you. I am him. You're what's left of him. That's not the same. Don't play moral shepherd, Prime snapped. You've been watching these versions die for years. You only care because this one hasn't imploded yet. Wiz shrugged. He makes good coffee. Prime pulled his rifle. Nico flinched. Wiz didn't. Back off, Prime said. Or I start fragmenting this place with echopulse charges. You know what happens if you destabilize the archive memory nodes without rekeying their harmonic lattices, Wiz warned. Yes, said Prime, grinning. I also know what happens if I do. The standoff broke fast. Prime fired. The shot clipped Wiz's shoulder, sending a spray of blood and melted fabric into the air. Nico screamed. Wiz moved, backflipping behind a console, tossing a smoke cube that erupted in thick synthetic fog. Nico dove, landing hard behind a server rack as the room filled with red strobing lights and the piercing whine of defensive shielding systems activating. Prime advanced, vision cutting through the fog. You shouldn't exist, he shouted at Nico. You were recycled. Left in the drift to die like all the others. I'm doing my best. Nico shouted back. I didn't ask to be printed off the cosmic equivalent of a USB stick. Prime raised a baton and struck the side panel. Sparks flew. Systems began to fail. Wiz hurled a blade across the chamber. It struck Prime's forearm and stuck. For a second he froze. And then he did something unexpected. He twitched. His expression changed, pain, confusion, followed by a flash of horror. No, don't surface. Prime dropped to one knee. His voice changed tone. Softer. Wait, is this the core Nico? I remember this one. He had a dog. Nico blinked. What? Bixby, Prime whispered. You lost him at the vet. You didn't cry. Not until you got home. Nico nodded, stunned. I thought they deleted that. They couldn't. It was too strong. Even the fractured strands held on to it. Then the moment passed. The rage returned. Prime stood, bleeding, blinking, twitching, but whole again. And furious. He raised his weapon. Wiz stepped forward, one hand raised. I uploaded a dead man switch, he said flatly. One step closer and I purged the entire vault grid. No backups. Not for you. Not for anyone. Prime froze. The room buzzed with power. Silent. Watching. Finally, Prime lowered his rifle. You're bluffing. I'm tired. Wiz's eyes were dead calm. Do I look like I'm bluffing? Prime backed away. This isn't over, he growled, bleeding silver blue from his arm. He tossed something at Nico's feet, a folded data tag etched with a symbol Nico had seen once before briefly in a decanter's eye. A triskelion of pulsing code spirals. Next time you want to meet the rest of you, Prime said, go there. And then he disappeared, cloak shimmer, low-frequency phase-out and gone. Was collapsed against a rack, breathing hard. Well, that sucked. Nico sat down, shaking. That guy had my trauma and better apps. I'm never going to emotionally recover. Later that night, as they camped outside the collapsed bunker under the stars, Nico finally asked. If he was the best version, what does that make me? Was tossed another log onto the fire. You're the one who asked that question. Nico didn't remember activating anything. He was pretty sure he hadn't touched a button. Or a terminal. Or so much as breathed near the control panel. But the bunker's lighting had just turned blood orange. A robotic voice echoed from above in an unnervingly cheerful Kiwi accent. Vault containment compromised. Redundancy protocols engaged. Facility-wide purge in 10 minutes. Nico turned slowly to Wiz. I swear to everything sentient, I didn't touch anything weird. You triggered the primary failsafe, Wiz said, already moving. It's motion linked to any unregistered iteration. Guess who qualifies? Wait me? I've been in here the whole, wait. His brain caught up. Oh, you mean the other me? Redundancy protocols were a Volatark-built failsafe, designed for ancient data vaults like this one. If multiple cognitive threads, especially hostile, incompatible, or merged, entered the same storage array and compromised structural coherence, the protocol didn't try to isolate or sort them. It wiped everything. That included all cognitive forks, all neural snapshots, and any nearby meatbags unlucky enough to still be breathing when the system hit zero. It's the nuclear option, was muttered. Volatark philosophy, if memory is corrupted, burn the shelf. Back in the corridor, the stack-fused Prime Nico stirred, injured, bitter, and still dangerous. Despite the pain twitching across his body from earlier feedback, his eyes tracked their every move like a hawk ready to lunge. Wipe it all, Prime hissed. If I can't have continuity, none of us will. Wiz sighed. Then pulled out a battered vape pen. Seriously? Nico asked. Now. Wiz didn't answer. He casually exhaled vapor in Prime's direction, and then lobbed the pen at the floor. The vape detonated in a sharp pop of magnetic thunder, sending a pulse of compressed electromagnetic interference into the corridor. Prime Nico seized violently and collapsed. His neural implants shorted out in a cloud of fizzing sparks. He hit the floor, twitching, dazed, and very unconscious. That was a grenade? Nico barked. Technically an EMP obfuscator, Wiz said, hauling Prime into a containment alcove and slapping a neural damper on his temple. Disguised as a nicotine dependency. Countdown. 8 minutes. The consoles flickered again. An array of overhead drone arms dropped from the ceiling and began unfolding surgical blades and memory prongs. Wiz cursed. We need to manually reset the failsafe. Can't you just lie to it? Nico offered. Hack it, spoof an identity? It doesn't care about identity. It cares about conflict. It detected a paradox event, two incompatible versions of the same neural lattice in the same place. 7 minutes. The chamber walls began retracting into smooth glass-like surfaces. The glow from the vault nodes intensified, each machine now pulsating with warning red. Nico ran toward the central console, which looked disturbingly like an altar. What happens if we just turn the power off? Best case scenario? Was shouted. We lose power and suffocate in a steel tomb. Worst case. The AI assumes we're hostile and initiates reflex erasure. It'll strip our cognitive layers and reprint us as factory default humanoids. Like, brain wipe us? Like turn us into biological modems for memory broadcasting. That is somehow worse. Reflex erasure is a terminal defense measure used by high-security Volatark installations. Rather than kill intruders, it repurposes them, resetting biological hosts into neutral carriers, perfect for spreading whatever data viral load is queued at the moment. They don't scream. They just broadcast. 5 minutes. Was yanked off a panel beneath the central altar console, revealing a glowing red shard embedded in a tangle of alien circuitry. This is the OSS key, he said. Primary logic core for the bunker's memory AI. Can we unplug it? We can override it. but it takes two. Why? Because it assumes any one person doing it solo is compromised. Built-in paranoia. Was tossed him a second shard, hot, buzzing, semi-metallic. Ready? Absolutely not. They each placed a shard into the console's twin ports. The system froze. Then a voice boomed, not the chipper Kiwi accent this time. Something older. Echoing. Multilingual at once. Dual input detected. Conflicted instances verified. Performing integrity challenge. From the floor, two hard-light constructs rose, Nico versus Nico. Not real but extrapolated from their current mental state. Mirror image combatants formed from thought. Oh no, Nico groaned. Mental boss fight. The construct of Prime was huge, confident, merciless. The construct of Nico was, Nico. Slouchy, unsure and holding a foam bat. Are you kidding me? He yelled at the ceiling. Project Better? Was called from the side. It mirrors your self-concept. Oh great. Prime lunged. Nico screamed through the foam bat and braced for death. Instead, the floor cracked. The construct of Prime shattered mid-lunge, obliterated in a burst of blue static. The room went silent. Viable integrity choice confirmed. Resetting system. Was blinked. What did you do? I stopped trying to be him, Nico said quietly. Turns out the system didn't want the strongest version. It wanted the most coherent one. System reset complete. All purge functions aborted. Vault re-established. The lights flickered back to normal. The drone arms retracted. The OSS key dimmed, then ejected itself from the console, smoking slightly. Was picked it up. Nico slumped against the wall, panting. We lived. You passed. I beat myself. You beat a broken version of yourself made of unresolved expectations and quantum insecurity. Which is impressive. Also weird. They both looked at the sealed alcove where Prime Nico lay, unconscious. What do we do with him? Nico asked. Was shrugged. Keep him iced. He's the universe's problem now. As they left the bunker, Nico looked at the cracked reflection in the glass entry chamber. His reflection didn't match. Just for a second. Then it was gone. And he didn't say a word. The bunker was sealed. Again. Except this time the override keys were fried, the power was flickering like a dying lighthouse, and the only way out involved something Nico had zero experience with. Uploading his brain into his roommate. Let me get this straight, Nico said, backing toward a wall as the temperature dropped. You want me to what? Jump into you? Yes, was replied, unzipping his jacket to reveal a thin subdermal grid glowing beneath his skin, running from his collarbone to his temple. I've got a temporary node grafted into my hardware. Type 9T memory cradle. It can house up to one surrogate consciousness. Like a USB drive with trauma? If that helps you say yes faster, then yes. Host sync migration is an emergency transfer protocol used by Volatark operatives when surrogate minds, or critical data, need to be preserved in transit. It allows the upload of a partial consciousness into a mobile node, most often another body augmented with a substructural mesh chassis. It is unstable. It is illegal in half the known systems. And it causes bleedback, the accidental exchange of memory fragments between host and upload. Which is why was looked extremely unhappy. It'll only be a few minutes, he said. Then we reach the evac point. You'll be downloaded into a new shell. One that doesn't stink of burnt toast and PTSD. Awesome, Nico muttered. And what happens if something goes wrong? You and I share thoughts forever. I hate this. I know. Was produced a slim implant the size of a coin, pulled back a patch of skin at his neck and slotted it in. It hissed. Lights on his chassis flared. Ready for sync. Nico stepped closer. The world slid. He felt himself rise, not bodily but mentally, like a spool of tape being pulled from a spinning reel. Then, nothing. Then, everything. There was no sky. No walls. Just fragments. Shards of experience floating in a void. A white room. Too bright. Conversations with beings who had no mouths but spoke in color and scent. Test tubes full of synthetic bone, labeled VR.02b, discarded. A voice that said, "This one's too empathetic." Recode the lateral inhibitors. Flying through a hollow world, carved like a geode, orbiting a sun that pulsed in Morse code. And worse. A conversation in a garden Nico recognized. His mother's garden. But she wasn't human. Not exactly. She wore his mother's face, but her eyes were transparent, and inside them danced data strands, rolling glyphs in an alien language Nico could almost understand. She knelt beside someone in a chair. A younger version of Wiz. Stability comes from connection, she said. You're more than a casing. You're a bridge. Nico snapped into another scene. His own memory? No. Wiz's memory, overlaying Nico's personality. He was watching Nico sleep. Not creepily. Quietly. Studying. Version 7's behavior doesn't match prior drift curves. He asks questions earlier. Reacts emotionally to recursion. He made a joke about cats. He's adapting. Fast. He's not a copy anymore. He's becoming someone else. In the real world, back in the corridor of the bunker, the door to the evac platform blew open. They weren't alone anymore. Two figures entered. Not decanters. Not instantiators. These were Veilborn, enforcers from a Volatark breakaway cult who believed memory surrogates were sacred sins. Unnatural things. And they'd kill anything that carried even a fragment of copied consciousness. One of them extended a long rod that shimmered like liquid obsidian. The other uncoiled a loop of memory chain glowing red-hot. Inside Wiz's chassis, Nico saw it all. Felt the adrenaline. The calculation. The options. Engage? Engage. Wiz, now carrying two minds, moved. He spun, deflecting the chain with an elbow reinforced by kinetic foam, ducked the obsidian rod and flung a repulsor bolt from his palm. The room buckled from the impact. The Veilborn screeched in stereo, retreating behind the vault walls. 5 minutes to evac, Wiz muttered aloud, blood dripping from his mouth. Nico? You still in there? Inside his head, Nico's voice answered. Yeah. And I am never judging your weird protein smoothies again. They reached the evac lift, a rising platform triggered by Wiz's biometrics and Nico's memory signature, synced together. As the lift carried them through a collapsing tunnel of ancient metal, Nico felt his presence start to slip. The connection weakening. The upload degrading. Wiz gritted his teeth. Stay together. Almost there. A final burst of motion, a jolt, and Nico was gone. Nico opened his eyes. He was lying in a new body. Same shape. Same face. Different heartbeat. A memory still lingered, not his own. Wiz's. The garden. The cold-eyed woman. And one word spoken softly with meaning. Prototype. Nico sat up and looked at Wiz, standing beside the table, pale and tired but upright. So, Nico said, just to recap, you're a chassis? I've been inside your brain. We fought religious memory cultists. And I may or may not be made by a lady who wears my mum's face. Wiz nodded. You want coffee? Nico asked. Wiz grinned. God, yes. They made it back to Wellington in a stolen emergency evac pod that smelled like disinfectant and wet socks. No fanfare. No grand explosions. Just a slow glide through cloud cover and a drop onto a rooftop parking deck in Newtown. Nico half expected the city to be gone. It wasn't. Trolleys still clanged down Cuba Street. Students still loitered in kebab lines. The same pigeon was still standing outside their apartment window, looking personally offended by gravity. He collapsed on the couch with a groan that sounded like a small death. So, he said. We survived. Technically, said Wiz, limping in behind him, we persisted through a deletion event with minimal structural loss and only partial synaptic instability. That's literally the definition of surviving in your world, isn't it? Yes. Cool. Later that night, after showers and silence, Nico stood in the kitchen holding a screwdriver. The final node, a gleaming shard barely larger than a matchbox, sat on the table. Inside it was the last backup of version Nico. Not prime. Not fractured. Just them. What he'd been before this version became whatever he was now. He could destroy it. One quick twist. Done. Wiz finally spoke. You have a choice, he said, voice low even. That node? You erase it and the system closes your thread. You become you. Untethered. Human enough. No backups. No more tracking. Or you trigger integration phase delta. Nico turned. That sounds ominous. It is. Integration phase delta was a forbidden final stage Volatark protocol. Originally designed as a failsafe, it allowed a stable surrogate mind to absorb legacy iterations, fragments, even corrupted ones, and synthesize them into a singular emergent identity. It would make him more than human. Not a copy. Not a prototype. A new thing entirely. Is it safe? Nico asked. Absolutely not. Nico picked up the shard. The metal was warm. It pulsed faintly, like it recognized him. He felt flashes again. Other lives. A Nico who died in orbit during a solar flare event. A Nico who escaped the decanter culling in a lunar vault. A Nico who made it to integration, and vanished. Every one of them different. Every one of them, Was there ever an original? He asked. Was paused. There was a template, he said. But it got overwritten. Too many variations. The system stopped tracking originals generations ago. So maybe there was never really a me. There is now. Before Nico could respond, the window exploded inward. A streak of blue fire cut through the room, smashing the wall console in a shower of sparks. Two Veilborn burst in, elite purifiers, clad in armor that shimmered between dimensions. Their weapons glowed red-hot with containment plasma. Unsanctioned integration protocol detected. Purge order initiated. Nico ducked instinctively, grabbing the toaster, because his reflexes were trash and he'd run out of tactical gear. Wiz, however, moved like a weapon. He launched across the kitchen, slamming one Veilborn into the fridge with a shoulder check that dented the metal. The other raised a plasma tether. Nico hurled the toaster. It hit the Veilborn square in the face. Boom. Surprisingly loud. The surge overloaded the Veilborn's containment array, sending waves of static pulsing through the air. Lights blew. Wiz's internal chassis sparked. The shard on the table glowed bright white. Integration phase initiated, said a voice that came from nowhere and everywhere. Nico's eyes rolled back. It wasn't pain. Or ecstasy. It was compression. Every memory, every version, every fragmented thought pressed into a single timeline. Multiple Nikos, lost, scared, angry, violent, kind, smashed into one another and settled. Mersh. And for the first time in his life, Nico knew what wholeness felt like. When he opened his eyes, the apartment was smoldering. The Veilborn were down. Wiz was sitting on the floor, fried but breathing. Nico was standing, unaffected. He turned to the toaster. It was intact. For once, it didn't explode. Something's different, Wiz said, coughing. You held the protocol. Yeah, Nico said softly. I think I did. He looked at his hands. Flexed his fingers. I remember everything. He looked at Wiz. Even her. Wiz's face tightened. Then you know. I know enough, Nico replied. But I want more. I want the whole truth. I want to see the worlds we came from. Meet the ones who made us. I want to understand why we were made to break. Wiz exhaled. And smiled. It looked practiced. Nico Terran was no longer just a backup. He was something new. Something unrecorded. And somewhere, deep in a forgotten archive, a single line of redacted Volatark script decrypted itself for the first time in centuries. Project Mirrorbound, status, rewriting.